After thousands of photographs and over 12 years of experience in the field with this camera, I can say with great confidence it's arguably the best camera for a beginning landscape photographer. However, there are many important factors to consider when choosing the right camera, but there's one that's not often mentioned, and that is you have to be in sync with your camera. It's truly a partnership. It's not as simple as having the best camera, but having the best camera for you. So, what is the best camera for a beginning landscape photographer? It's a used full-frame camera with excellent low-light capability. It's the Nikon D800. Hold on, get a hold of yourself, or you blow a head gasket. Give me a couple minutes, and let me tell you why the D800 is the best camera for landscape photography. And you may just find that it's the right camera for you. Before we get into the details of the camera, let's talk about why I recommend buying a used camera over a new camera. Used is better for a beginner because often beginners place more emphasis on the camera rather than what they're shooting. In other words, they tend to focus on the gear and less on the composition, especially when buying a shiny new camera. It's like buying a new car. You're so worried about every little scratch that you can't enjoy the ride. Buying used eliminates that distraction, allowing the beginner to focus more on making great photographs and less on the gear. The sooner we realize that the camera is just a tool, the quicker we improve our skills. The D800 is a professional, fully capable camera. It's still available in the used market and in an excellent price range, at least until the word gets out. Despite its age, it can still compete with the best cameras of today. Even when pixel peeping against the D850, the D800 holds its own. Indeed, there's no massive difference in the image quality between the two. And even though this camera was manufactured a decade ago, it can still be serviced and repaired. The D800 was announced in February 2012 and it began shipping shortly after. I purchased my camera around January of 2013. I dragged it through torrential downpours in the jungles of the Philippines and slung it over my shoulder through the streets of Thailand. It's been to Malaysia, Japan. I hauled it across the Middle East. It's truly been around the world. This camera it's endured cold weather. It's been through the hottest summers. This thing is just built like a tank. And I think best of all, it has an optical viewfinder, which you don't find on today's mirrorless. The optical viewfinder is just best for isolating a composition. Personally, I just don't sync up with the electronic viewfinder. I just find it difficult to compose an image using the electronic viewfinder or the LCD on the back of the camera. I just can't do it. With phones and computers, everyone's viewing life through some type of screen nowadays. Although this may seem normal to many, it feels less personal to me. Viewing a stunning landscape through the lens, it just allows me to remove distractions, isolate the subject. In fact, it makes me feel connected to the scene. Also, using an eyepiece brings the camera kind of closer to the body, and it helps you hold the camera still. It gives you more stability when shooting handheld. If you've never tried an optical viewfinder for landscape photography, you may be missing out on something quite special. Now, I'm not going to geek out on the specs of the D800. There's plenty of videos out there on YouTube for that. But let's talk about the real-world application in the field, the things that truly matter. When in the field, I always think about the final product, the image. What am I going to do with it? And the images from this D800, they're superb for large prints. And printing is the end game for me. If a camera can make quality prints, it'll be fine for everything else. Don't worry about posting images online. Any camera can do that. The D800 performs very well with high ISOs. At ISO 100 to 400, images are clear with no noticeable noise when viewing at 100%. Between 400 and 800, I really have to work hard and just zoom in to see any noise at all. It's just not an issue. Even around 22 to 2500, the images still look great and are very usable. At 3200, there's definitely noise, but it's okay. When it comes to ISO, it's far more important to focus on the vision. Use whatever ISO is needed to make your vision a reality. Don't worry about a little noise. Moving on to color. All my years with this camera, color's never been an issue. If you're buying the D800, shooting raw is the only way to go. In fact, I strive to make my images match the vision I had while I was at the scene, the way I remember it in the mind's eye. With this camera, I've never had an issue getting any of the colors that I want. What's more important is how well the D800 handles light. With a dynamic range of around 14 stops, the D800 is capable of meeting even the most demanding scenes, which is particularly important with the high dynamic range found in sunrise and sunset photography. Now, sharpness, on the other hand, that seems to grab everyone's attention. I've never questioned the sharpness of this camera, but it's always met my expectations. However, one could argue that the D800E is the best camera for a beginning landscape photographer. The low-pass filter was modified to kind of cancel out the anti-aliasing effect to improve sharpness. Modifying the low-pass filter results in less blur in the image, but at a cost of introducing moire. Moire is a visual effect that appears as wavy or distorted patterns. It shows up when the camera's pixel grid in the sensor conflicts with repetitive patterns, such as tightly woven fabric or some architectural designs. But as a landscape photographer, these patterns are typically not problematic in nature. Bottom line, when solely used for landscape photography, the D800E may just be the better option. Nevertheless, at the time when I purchased my D800, I compared images between the D800 and the D800E. Truly, the differences were just nothing to write home about. I couldn't justify paying an extra $300 for such a minor difference in sharpness. On that note, if you are debating between the D800 and the D800E, I would choose the camera that's just in the best condition at the best price. In other words, choose the camera that's the best deal. There were far more D800s manufactured than the D800E. More likely than not, after searching eBay and comparing prices, the D800 is going to be the best choice in the used camera market. But if you're willing to pay a bit more, I would consider the D800E if you plan to use this camera solely for landscape photography. You won't go wrong either way. On that note, both the D800 and the D800E have 51 focus points, which are very useful in the field. The focus points allow you to select a specific area using the viewfinder and the multi-selector switch. In live view, you can move the focus point anywhere on the screen. I often use both these methods. After using the viewfinder to compose the image, I sometimes zoom in using the LCD to focus on a specific area. Most of the time, I rely on the camera's autofocus, which is excellent on this camera. While we're on the subject of focusing, I would not recommend this camera for video. The autofocus is terrible. It's noisy and it just hunts back and forth trying to find focus. On the other hand, for manual focus, the visual indicators in the viewfinder are pretty good. 2 arrows guide your direction until a tiny ball or dot appears solid in the viewfinder. Once that ball appears, that focus is spot on. Look, I'm never going to sell this camera. I'm not being sentimental, it's just one of the best cameras ever built. Mark my words, decades from now, this camera is going to be hard to find. Super expensive on the used camera market. To be fair, I'm somewhat biased, but my experience has mainly been with Nikon's full-frame DSLRs and 35mm film cameras. But for a top-notch camera like the D800, especially at $400 or $500 used, I don't think there's a better camera out there. But that's my opinion. Look, I'm not trying to influence you, but merely provide you with the information to make your decision. I'm here if you have any questions, and I'll get back with you as soon as possible. Believe me, I know what it's like. Buying used, shelling out hundreds of dollars, not sure which camera to buy. I realize you're not made of money, nor am I. I try to make unbiased and sound recommendations that benefit you and not me. I'm not a saint. I just want to treat others the way I want to be treated. That's why I think eBay is the way to go for a used camera. Oh yeah, if it's not provided in the listing, make sure you ask for a shutter count. Get an idea of how many photographs this camera's taken. Watch my tips for buying used gear on eBay. I'll leave a link in the video description. If you're just getting started in landscape photography, you may be wondering, what immediate accessories should I buy? That's a good question. But here's a list to help you get started. You keep in mind this is just my recommendations, not all inclusive. Use what you have to begin with. But if you have no lens, I would recommend the Nikon 24-70 f2.8. I have many years of experience with this lens. It's the best all-around lens for landscape photography. For more on that, watch my video, If I Could Have Only One Lens. Next, invest in the best quality tripod you can afford. But remember, good now is better than great never. Also, do yourself a favor and buy an L bracket. It'll make switching back and forth between portrait and landscape orientation so much easier. And a good cable release is something to think about too. And I get it, you can use the camera's self-timer, but that doesn't lock up the mirror. A cable release, it's going to help you reduce camera shake and help you get the best possible quality out of your images. Lastly, invest in a good backpack. You don't have to drop a house payment to afford one, but it's better to buy nice instead of buying twice. For more information on choosing the best camera for landscape photography, watch this video right here. See you on the trail.